When Shedeur Sanders got flattened by a helmet-to-chest hit moments after releasing the ball, and no flag flew, no replay rolled, and no analyst blinked, he didn't just take the pain, he took notes. And later, in a Browns film room, with no cameras and no PR filters, he let the truth spill out. The NFL protects revenue, not people. It wasn't bitterness. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion from watching Mahomes' ankle become a week-long media event, while Sanders' hits are ignored like background noise. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. And that exhaustion hit a nerve far beyond Cleveland. Sanders' words weren't meant for the spotlight, but they landed there because they couldn't be ignored. Mahomes' quiet validation only confirmed what insiders already knew. The league picks favorites when it comes to player safety. But the real shift came in locker rooms across the country, where young QBs started texting, talking, organizing. For the first time, a raw critique cracked the league's polished image. And what poured out was a demand for fairness louder than any hit could ever be. Shedeur Sanders did more than call out a system. He set off a chain reaction the NFL never wanted to deal with. In a league where quarterbacks are seen as untouchable assets, he reminded everyone that not all quarterbacks are protected equally. And the reaction? Silence from the top, discomfort in the middle, but unmistakable momentum at the bottom. Let's start with what triggered this in the first place. A rough hit. No flag. No commentary. No reaction. Just another young quarterback. Slammed to the turf after getting the ball out clean, and no one seemed to care. But for Shedeur, this wasn't just one missed call. It was the latest in a growing pile of evidence that something's fundamentally broken. That's what made the team meeting moment so explosive. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't media-facing. It was raw and reactive. An emotional response to watching himself take a late hit on film again and knowing there will be no accountability. And instead of quietly letting it slide, he called it out, not as a Mahomes versus Sanders issue, but as a Mahomes and Sanders issue, a league-wide imbalance that no one wants to admit. And he went straight to the heart of it. The NFL doesn't protect all quarterbacks the same. It protects the ones who make it money, not out of malice, not even out of favoritism, but because Mahomes represents billions in ad deals, jersey sales, TV ratings, and brand equity. Protecting him is protecting the business. What about Shedeur? He's a fifth-round pick. He's not driving ticket sales. He's not featured on Sunday Night Football promos. So when he takes a dangerous hit, the cameras cut away. The refs keep their flags tucked in. The league moves on. And that's the message. Some quarterbacks are investments. The rest are expendable. But here's where it all flipped. After Shedeur's comments leaked, after the press picked it up and turned the spotlight back on the NFL's uneven officiating, Patrick Mahomes himself reportedly called Shedeur, not to scold him, not to defend himself, but to say, "You're right, let that sink in." The guy at the top, the one who benefits most in the league's protective instincts, acknowledged the truth. Mahomes admitted that yes, there's a hierarchy. Yes, he gets extra scrutiny when he's hit. No, it's not fair. And no, it's not something he asked for or even supports. He didn't go public. He didn't need to. His quiet agreement was enough to blow this conversation wide open. Because when both ends of the quarterback spectrum, Mahomes at the top, Sanders at the bottom, agree that the system is flawed, that's not a theory anymore. That's a confirmation. And that's exactly what made the NFL panic. Within days, Commissioner Roger Goodell reportedly convened an emergency competition committee meeting, not to investigate officiating inconsistencies, not to review enforcement data, but to contain the narrative. The focus wasn't on fixing the rules. It was on protecting the image. League insiders say the messaging was clear. Issue a boilerplate statement about player safety, then tell teams to keep their young quarterbacks in line. Translation: say just enough to sound like you're listening, but don't actually change anything. But this time, the strategy isn't working, because Shedeur's critique wasn't vague. He pointed to a specific technical, rule-based failure, the inconsistent enforcement of roughing the passer. It's not an emotional argument. It's a football argument, one that every quarterback, coach, analyst, and fan can recognize on film. When Mahomes gets hit late, There are replays, penalties, discourse. When Sanders gets hit late, there's nothing. No calls, no accountability, no camera cuts, just silence. That silence is the sound of selective enforcement. And now that Shedeur said out loud, more players are starting to speak, if not publicly, then privately. A reported group chat among younger quarterbacks has emerged in the wake of all this, not for drama, but for solidarity. Players across different teams are saying the same thing. This isn't new. We've felt this. We've seen this. The system protects some and ignores others. And up until now, we've all just accepted it. That quiet acceptance is starting to fracture. Because here's the thing. What Shedeur did wasn't just vent frustration. It was a calculated risk. A professional gamble. Speaking up as a young player, knowing the league might retaliate. Knowing critics would drag his name, accuse him of playing the Deion Sun card, or frame him as just another disgruntled backup, trying to stay relevant. But those criticisms missed the point entirely. His last name didn't shield him from hits. It didn't give him extra protection on the field. It didn't earn him the benefit of the doubt from officials. If anything, it made it easier for people to dismiss him, as if his argument could be explained away by legacy. But this wasn't about legacy. It was about logic. It was about how a league that claims to care about safety consistently prioritizes optics over fairness. How the guys at the top, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, are treated like national treasures, while the guys still proving themselves. They're treated like crash test dummies. And maybe, in previous years, this would have been brushed off. But we're not in that era anymore. Today's players aren't just employees. They're platforms. They talk. They organize. They share. And the more voices that align with what Shedeur said, the harder it is for the NFL to spin this as isolated frustration. Because it's not. It's structural. It's economic. It's the result of a business model that treats safety as an investment, not a right. And when you operate that way for long enough, eventually someone is going to call it what it is. That someone just happened to be Shedeur Sanders. So where does this go from here? The NFL has two options. One, continue pretending this conversation doesn't need to happen. Issue the same empty statements. Keep the rules as they are. Hope the news cycle moves on. Or two, confront it. Review enforcement data. Examine whether high-profile players are getting more calls. Start protecting all quarterbacks equally, regardless of their fame, contract size, or jersey sales. Actually show the league values safety as a principle, not just as a marketing slogan. But given what we've seen so far, the league seems far more interested in protecting its image than its players, which only proves Shedeur's point. So now, the ball's in the fans' court. The players are already talking. The media is watching. The truth is out. And what happens next depends on whether people are willing to hold the league accountable. Because the hits aren't going to stop. But maybe the silence around them finally will. What do you think? Should the NFL address the obvious imbalance in how quarterbacks are protected? Was Shedeur Sanders out of line? Or was he exactly what this conversation needed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video, if you've seen the double standard on the field. Share it with someone who still believes the league treats all players the same. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more breakdowns on the drama the NFL can't keep under wraps. This story is just beginning, and you're going to want to see where it goes. And here's the uncomfortable reality the NFL's trying so hard to keep buried. Shedeur Sanders didn't just expose a flaw in the system. He exposed the system itself. Because once you strip away the glossy promos, the protect the quarterback campaign slogans, and the rule book full of safety language, what's left is a business model. One that operates on tiers. One where the rules are enforced based not on the danger to hit, but on the value of the player who took it. And the moment Shedeur said that out loud, the league's carefully curated image took a direct hit. You don't need a PhD in football politics to understand how this works. If Patrick Mahomes gets sacked and doesn't bounce back up immediately, it's DEFCON 1. Medical tent, sideline buzz, multiple camera angles, commentary speculation, entire halftime segments dissecting the replay, and more often than not, a flag. If Shedeur Sanders gets blindsided after releasing the ball and his helmet nearly spins sideways, silence. The play continues. Maybe a brief shot at him wincing. Maybe nothing. And that's exactly what he was talking about. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't delusional. He was accurate, and that's what made it sting. This wasn't about resentment toward Mahomes. He made that clear. It wasn't an attack on greatness. It was a call out of the NFL's double standard, one where economic value determines bodily protection. And the sad part? Everyone already knew. The fans, the analysts, the players. This has been happening in plain sight for years. But no one in the league ever acknowledged it. Until now. And it wasn't someone at the top. It wasn't a Super Bowl MVP or a Hall of Fame-bound veteran. It was a young, unestablished quarterback, a fifth-round pick, a player with far more to lose and to gain by speaking up. That's what makes this moment so significant. Shedeur took the risk no one else would. He said what everyone else tiptoed around. And because it came from him, unfiltered, emotional, and rooted in lived experience, it hit differently. And then came the leak. The transcript of that private Cleveland Browns team meeting spread like wildfire. Shedeur's words were everywhere. And in a matter of hours, the league had a PR crisis on its hands. This wasn't just a frustrated player complaining. This was a systemic critique from inside the building, and the league had no idea how to handle it. Cue the NFL's emergency response. A behind-closed-doors meeting of the competition committee hastily convened to figure out how to spin the narrative. No announcements of officiating reviews. No changes to roughing the passer enforcement guidelines. Just a carefully worded statement about committing to universal player safety and a quiet directive sent out to teams. Control your young quarterbacks. Make sure no one else adds fuel to the fire. So instead of confronting the issue, they tried to smother it. But here's the problem. You can't smother something that everyone's already breathing in. Because while the league was busy doing damage control, the players were having their own conversations. And this time, they weren't sticking to their own locker rooms. Reports surfaced of a private group text among young quarterbacks across multiple teams. And in that chat, they weren't mocking Shedeur. They were backing him, sharing stories, swapping details, comparing the calls they didn't get, the hits they weren't protected from. And right there, the NFL's worst nightmare started taking shape. Player-to-player solidarity around officiating bias. Not through a union, not through an agent, but through grassroots, peer-to-peer communication. A new generation of quarterbacks quietly realizing they weren't imagining the double standard, they were living it. And you can't unsee that. Even Mahomes couldn't. That's why his reported off-the-record call to Shedeur was such a seismic moment, not because he endorsed the drama, but because he confirmed the truth. He told Sanders that, yeah, the system favors him, that the protection he receives isn't always warranted, but it happens anyway, that he didn't ask for it, doesn't necessarily want it, but benefits from it all the same. That's not just a show of respect. That's a tacit admission that everything Shedeur said was valid. So now the NFL's in an impossible position. Because how do you refute a claim when the most protected quarterback in the league agrees with it? You don't. So instead, you go quiet. You hope the story fades, that the next news cycle buries it. You hope Mahomes throws 4 touchdowns on Sunday, and everyone goes back to posting highlight reels. You hope Shedeur's name slips out of trending topics. You hope the other quarterbacks stay in their lanes. But none of that is guaranteed, because this story struck a nerve. And not just with quarterbacks. Coaches, commentators, and fans are watching. They're replaying the hits. They're clocking the missed calls. They're remembering the games where their team's QB got rocked with no whistle, no flag, no review, and now they have a name and a moment to attach it to. This is what makes Shedeur's critique different from every other officiating complaint. It wasn't whining. It wasn't a post-game excuse. It was a critique of the structure, not the circumstance. A direct challenge to how the league operationalizes player safety. Who it protects, why it protects them, and what it's willing to ignore if there's no financial incentive to care. And the league's reaction? It only reinforced the point. Because the minute the comment went public, the NFL didn't call for reform. They didn't address enforcement standards. They tried to manage the fallout, which tells you exactly what they value more. Narrative control over player well-being. If the integrity of the sport mattered as much as they claim, they would have used this moment to step up, They would have acknowledged the inconsistencies. They would have invited scrutiny into officiating bias. They would have opened the floor to players' concerns. Instead, they hit mute, which is why the story still has legs, because the silence is deafening. And Shedeur? He didn't walk it back. He didn't issue a PR-crafted apology. He let the word stand. And the longer the league avoids a conversation, the louder that silence becomes. So here's the question now. How many more quarterbacks are going to speak up? How many more players are going to stop pretending the rules apply equally? How many fans are going to demand an answer when they see their QB hit illegally and nothing happens? Because once you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you realize protection is performance-based, tied to revenue and visibility, you stop accepting bad officiating as just part of the game. You start asking harder questions. And the NFL, it better be ready for them. Because what started as a leaked meeting rant has become something much bigger. It's a referendum on how the league treats its most vulnerable players. Not just rookies, but anyone not named Mahomes or Burrow or Allen. This is the beginning of a larger reckoning. One that doesn't go away with a few vague safety promos or a new rules committee next offseason. Because now the players know, the fans know, and the tape doesn't lie. And now that the first quarter's over, the NFL's got a serious problem heading into halftime. Because the one thing this league depends on more than high ratings, packed stadiums, or even Patrick Mahomes highlights is control. Control of the narrative. Control of the image. Control of what gets said, how it gets said, and who's allowed to say it. And that's exactly what Shedeur Sanders shattered. When he spoke up, it wasn't a pre-approved soundbite. It wasn't a mic'd up moment with polished media coaching behind it. It was raw, emotional, honest, and completely off script. That alone made it powerful. But what made it undeniable was what came next. A flood of private support, a confirmed nod from the league's biggest name, and total silence from the people in charge. It's always been this way in the NFL. Rookies are told to earn their place. Don't speak unless spoken to. Stay in your lane. But the problem is when the lane includes taking repeated, dangerous hits with no protection and no accountability. Someone has to say something. And Shedeur did, knowing full well he wasn't supposed to. And because he did, the structure cracked. Let's not forget what really made this blow up. It wasn't just the words. It was the fact that Mahomes agreed. That quiet off-the-record phone call, that's the linchpin in this entire thing. It changed Shedeur's claims from speculation into confirmation. Because if even the guy benefiting from the system can admit it's broken, where does that leave the league? It leaves them exposed. Because now it's not just a young quarterback complaining. It's a reality the NFL can't disprove because it's been happening in plain sight, over and over, week after week. Quarterbacks like Mahomes get flag protections on hits that are borderline. Quarterbacks like Shedeur get knocked into next week after the throw, and the ref's whistle stays cold. It's the kind of thing fans have joked about for years. You can't touch Mahomes. Brady used to get those flags. Watch the refs now that it's a primetime game. But what used to be jokes now look a lot more like facts. Shedeur just connected the dots. Loudly. And the NFL's playbook for damage control? Completely outdated in this new environment. Because in the age of leaked transcripts, group chats, and real-time fan reaction, you can't just issue a vague statement and hope it all goes away. You can't send out hush memos to teams and expect players to fall in line when they've already seen the truth for themselves. The era of top-down control is gone. What Shedeur tapped into, whether he meant to or not, is bottom-up momentum. And that is what's keeping league execs up at night. Because this is about more than officiating. This is about what happens when players realize they don't have to wait until they're stars to speak up. That they don't need approval to point out hypocrisy. That being young doesn't mean being silent. Shedeur's moment lit the spark, but what's growing behind it is much bigger. Now, you've got quarterbacks talking across teams, not in front of cameras, not in the press, but in DMs, in texts, quietly, carefully, but more and more openly. There's a new awareness taking shape, one that says, we've all been seeing this, and we're tired of pretending we haven't. And here's the irony. The NFL could have done something. They could have used this moment to course correct, acknowledge the inconsistency, talk openly about how much scrutiny star players draw from both defenders and officials. Reaffirm a commitment to fair and consistent enforcement. Maybe even invite quarterbacks to share their feedback. It would have been bold but smart. Instead, they went straight to suppression mode. PR statements, internal warnings, business as usual. And in doing so, they confirmed everything Shedeur said, that protecting the league's image will always come before protecting its players, that admitting fault is seen as a bigger threat than actual safety concerns, that unless you're a billion-dollar name, your injuries don't warrant outrage. That's not a good look. And the fans see it now, too, because while Mahomes may not say it on the record, fans know what they're watching. You don't need insider access to notice the difference. You see it every week. Certain quarterbacks getting the benefit of the doubt, the instant flags, the protective body language from the refs. And others, they get the shrug. The question is no longer whether there's a double standard. The question is, how long is the league going to pretend there isn't? And if Shedeur's moment proved anything, it's that younger players aren't waiting for permission anymore. They're watching the league's response, or lack of one, and drawing their own conclusions. If the NFL won't protect them with consistent enforcement, they'll protect themselves with truth, with solidarity, with each other. And that shift, it's irreversible, because now there's precedent, now there's proof, and now there's pressure. Even if Shedeur's own career doesn't skyrocket from here, even if he fades from the headlines or ends up buried on a depth chart, this moment doesn't go away. It's part of the larger story now, a reference point, a turning point, the day the hierarchy stopped being a quiet understanding and became a documented, league-wide conversation. And here's what should scare the NFL most. It's not the stars who are talking. It's the players without power. The ones who have every reason to stay silent and aren't. That's where real change starts. Not from the top, but from the ones who have nothing left to lose and say the truth anyway. So what happens next? That depends on whether the league is willing to listen. Will they finally confront the imbalance and address it head-on? Or will they keep hiding behind polished statements while letting the tape tell a different story? One thing's for sure, the silence isn't working anymore. The fans are asking questions. The players are talking. And the inconsistencies are impossible to ignore. So what do you think? Should the league take a long, hard look at how they enforce quarterback protections? Was Shedeur Sanders out of line? Or was he the first person brave enough to tell the truth everyone else was dancing around? Are we witnessing the beginning of a cultural shift in how players challenge institutional bias within the game? Let us know below. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you've seen this play out on Sundays, drop your examples. Like this video if you think it's time the NFL stop pretending all quarterbacks are treated the same. Share it with someone who still thinks it's just part of the game. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more raw, no-spin coverage of the stories this league doesn't want in the headlines. This conversation isn't over. It's only just getting started. And the longer the NFL stays silent, the louder everyone else is going to get.